What is up, guys? Fado82 coming at you with some raid cam footage from the US Rustopia vanilla server. What you're taking a look at right now is a compound of Yar, BHC, ZFG, and the A-Team. They've built together in a sprawling compound here, walling off a rad town. And this raid cam, guys, is a direct raid cam that's linked to the last raid cam we did, which is a 250 rocket raid in which this group of players in this compound raided Dirt McGirt and allies. What you're looking at here are the first shots that have been fired, which is by Dirt McGirt and LST, who are in two separate raid teams here coming into the compound. They're coming in hot. They've already fired some rockets, taking out part of a perimeter tower, which is something you always want to do. Those towers can be a bit problematic, and you always want to keep your eyes on those towers. If you notice the base here, the way it's set up, there's many flank towers put on top of rocks, so it's going to be a difficult base to raid. The raiders are lining up at the front door here, and the only way in, or the way that they're choosing to go in, is right through the front door. They're making short work of that. They're blasting through it with rockets. They're getting into the inside of that courtyard, which is between the two walls here, so it wasn't just one wall and they're through. And now they're in here, and they're going to take some hatchets and work on that wood and not worry about getting through that with a rocket. They're going to save their rockets for later. Always, if you are raiding a base, bring some hand tools with you and try not to use your rockets. It's nerve-wracking during a raid. It's easy to get caught up in the mix of it, and especially the scale of a compound like this, and just start firing rockets. But you want to save them because you might need them later on, and chances are in a raid like this, you're going to need them later on. Taking a look at what's going on right here, the raid team has breached the courtyard. They're now inside, and we're going to pan back out and take a look at what's going on. You'll notice in this compound, they were ballsy enough to wall off a rad town. That's a big move, bold move to do on a server, so you can always expect a lot of competition when you do that. Looking at what's going on here, guys, there is a tower here, a very large flank tower or spotting tower that was built up here, and you'll see one of the members was on guard duty. He may have not been aware of what was going on. Didn't look like he was moving too much. He was on sentry duty. He may have been away from his keyboard, but he is back in the fight now. You'll notice he's respawning there. Take note, guys, that there's 3 sleeping bags there, so there's not just one spawn point. That means that raider can die, or that defender rather, can die a couple times and come back at those bags, so it's not he dies once and then has to wait a certain amount of time to be able to respawn. He can get back in the fight pretty quick. He's looting his body, he's picking up his bolt action rifle, and he's getting back into the mix. The raiders are not going to take any chances here, and they're firing some rockets at that tower. They're trying to take that tower down and trying to take that defender out of the fight because they know that guy has a good vantage point and it's going to be a bit of a problem for him. At this point in time, guys, it's hard to really see what's going on, so I'm going to do a lot of narrating with this raid cam because it's sort of necessary, but the raiders are breaking into separate fire teams here. Dirt McGirt and his squad are breaking into separate fire teams, hitting individual bases, and LST is focusing on individual targets. It's a smart decision to do in a compound this size, so all the defenders can't gather together and focus on one common enemy, but they can sort of have to worry about setting out individual fires rather than one big one, if that makes sense. So when we see a raid like this, it's good if they hit different targets because it's a lot more chaos for the defenders. It does mean the raiders aren't as focused necessarily on one target, but I think it's a smart strategy in a situation like this. You'll notice there's another large tower here built on a rock, so there's many flank towers, many large towers in this compound, which are giving those defenders a vantage point. It's hard to gain an accurate count of the number of raiders here for the defenders because they are spread out in that compound. They're hiding behind rocks, buildings, so it's a bit difficult for the defenders to get an accurate read on what's going on. This is the ZFG compound's base. Dirt and his crew are focusing on this base right now. They're sending rockets into that base and they're trying to open it up as best they can. They're also taking fire from a perimeter flank tower, which you can see in the distance. That tower has at least 2 members on there with bolt action rifles and one with an AK with a silencer, and they're firing back down at the members of the raid team. So the raid team members have to be focused on pushing through into that base, but also making sure that they're not targets for those defenders who are up on that sniping tower. This is a really chaotic scene, guys, and it's really something that is, to be part of it is very chaotic. It's similar to something that you might experience in sort of a war movie or just a large-scale RTS game, and that's sort of what it looks like when we take that bird's eye perspective. But notice those rockets they're sending into that base. They're wasting no time at all. They're pushing into that base, they're trying to get into it, and they're trying to make short work of the defenders and take out their defensive positions. They're doing a damn fine job of doing that. The defenders are holding still. They're not rushing out to the courtyard, which is something they want to do. Their base is crumbling. It's falling apart from those rockets, but they're maintaining their defensive positions. They're not utilizing those flank towers around their base as much as probably They should, but they may not have put sleeping bags in them. They may still have been under construction in that base, and they may not have really thought they'd get raided in a compound of this size. But on Rustopia, towards the end of a wipe cycle, players bring it all to bear, and that's what we're seeing here. Panning back out, guys, you can really get a sense of this compound, how large and how massive it is, and this is something that is probably the largest scale compound that I've filmed in a raid camp. Filmed a lot of raid cams, but this one is, in terms of the scope of the compound, very, very large. So there's some gunfire going here on the courtyard. Make note that the guys in green are Dirt McGirt and the allies. Dirt McGirt and LST all wore the same uniform, which again is something you always want to do in Rust. It helps to know who to shoot and who not to shoot when you're dressed the same way. Granted, the defenders can wear the same clothes too, they can pick them up off the body, but for the most part in a firefight, people aren't too concerned with how they're dressing. So it pays off to make sure that you're dressing appropriately before you go into battle. Something, guys, that I have to tell you with this raid cam is we talk a lot about raid bases during raid cams. Build a raid base, build a staging base so you have respawn points. That was done during this raid. However, the raid base was taken out before the players could fully construct it. So the sleeping bags were taken out and that raid base was already hit by Yar. So the raiders here are at a bit of a disadvantage in that when they go down, they're going to be down and they have to respawn in a sleeping bag they've placed on the ground in the compound. So you'll notice some raiders actually run back naked and they're looting bodies and getting back into the fight. And that's due to the fact that their raid base was taken out before the raid even got underway, which is usually a bit of a game changer, but what the raiders here decided to do was continue to push forward, go in there, with the rockets, guns blazing, and just keep pushing forward. They've now moved on. Dirt and his allies have now concentrated their efforts. They've moved away from the ZFG base, and they're focusing on the BHC base here, which is right up the hill from the ZFG base. This base is going to be central to this raid camp, and this is where a lot of fighting is going on. What they're doing here is they're trying to push into this base as quickly as they can to essentially take it over, or to take over as much of it as they can. If they gain access to some perimeter tool cabinets, they're going to be able to have some limited building privilege so they can place down sleeping bags, campfires, things that they need to survive. And that's what they're trying to do here. They've actually taken over that front tower there, that sort of gatehouse, and that is where they are staging at this point. They've been able to place some sleeping bags down there, and they've gained some limited building privilege. You'll notice they're sending rockets right into the heart of the BHC base, which is very, very difficult for those members to defend against. Those rockets are coming in at a fast rate, and they're trying to rush that base as quickly as possible. BHC, in terms of how they built the base here, they have defensive towers around the perimeter of the base, but it doesn't look like they're being utilized again like the ZFG base. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if sleeping bags perhaps weren't put up there, but that's something that you always want to utilize. Taking a look at a horse here, guys. There's a horse running through the middle of this chaotic raid. Hope that horse stays alive, but looks like he's smart and he's getting the hell out of the way, which is a good move. Back, looking at the action here at the BHC compound, Dirt and his men are again here in that Gatehouse tower, and they are continuing to hold that position. You'll see they're taking fire from different points in this compound, so they can't stick their heads up too much. If they come up for air, they're likely to get hit by fire from another flank base or from another base that's here inside the compound. Panning back out here, guys, rockets are again going into the heart of that base, and looking at the inner part of the base, you'll notice those rockets are making short work of that base, and they're opening up pathways. Members of Dirt and his crew are now in here. There was a loot room door that was either left open or actually looks like it was blown open. So there's a loot room that they have access to. I'm not sure what they're getting out of that loot room, but it may be a central loot room in the base, and they may be re-gearing and resupplying from that loot. So if, say they hit a loot room and they gained access to a ton more rockets or C4, they're going to use that to their advantage. That may have been a big win for the Raiders in this particular case. Notice there, guys, that there was some boosting that was done. You can now jump on top of your teammates. Ladders are not in the game, but you can jump on your friend's head or shoulders and jump back up higher, and that's what was done here. Girth Crunch jumped on top of his buddy, got up there, made short work of one of the defenders who was there with a silenced AK, and now he's on top of that building providing overwatch for his teammates with a bolt-action rifle. And taking a look at the base from the sky here, we can really see that it's really thoughtfully laid out in that it has 4 towers surrounding the base, and it has the central part of the base as well, which does have some defensive positions. The towers are, again, not being utilized as they probably should in a raid like this, and we don't know the reasons for that, but that's something that if those towers were utilized, this raid would be going a lot different on this particular base. Looking at what's going on up here, Girth Crunch is still up there providing overwatch for his members. He's got his bolt action out, and he is making short work of anyone. He is a bit of a target up there, though. If they can differentiate him, if the defenders are calling out in TeamSpeak to their allies who are in the compound and letting them know that that person on the roof is one of the raiders, he's probably going to be taking some fire as well. So it's a bit of a dangerous position for him, but it is a position that gives him a vantage point to be able to communicate back to his teammates and his TeamSpeak exactly what's going on. There's not a lot of BHC members that we're seeing in this base, so they are most likely inside that base trying to guard loot rooms, but they're not really bringing much of a fight to the members at that point. They're probably overwhelmed with the rockets. They may be respawning back at other bases and trying to flank the raiders. We're really not sure what's going on at this point in time. But it is turning tonight. We're going to cut out the night footage a little bit because it's hard to see, but we'll leave some of it in so you guys can just kind of appreciate and notice that. This raid lasted well over an hour, so it was a long raid. But during the night, it was lit up by muzzle flashes. It was relatively quiet during the night. There were muzzle flashes at various points, but for the most part, people couldn't see what was going on, and they chose to remain silent for the most part. What you're looking at here right now is the other end of the compound here, which is another sort of gatehouse, so to speak, in the back there, and all of the BHC members are in there. They don't have a lot of gear, it looks like. They have some armor on, they have torches. It doesn't look like they have many guns. That indicates to me that their main loot rooms were breached by Dirt and his team. So the loot was despawned. At one point I observed Dirt and his members despawning loot, which of course you're going to do in a raid. It's not necessarily a dick move during an active raid because you need to make sure your enemies don't have those supplies. But I believe, to the best of my knowledge, that they probably hit most of their loot rooms or their main loot room. So the BHC members here are sort of at the mercy of the raiders, and then they're probably waiting for their allies to come in as well. Again, taking a look at some of that night sky footage, we can see it's lit up by muzzle flashes, and it's a bit of a chaotic scene. As night turns today, we're again taking a look at that compound, appreciating the beauty of it all. We do notice there's a couple dead defenders up there, so it looks like they were trying to utilize those towers as best they could, but they were probably out-resourced and didn't have enough up there to sort of keep the fight going. Taking a look at the base here and looking inside, guys, you'll notice the damage that those rockets did, and they really opened up that base quite a bit. The base was honeycombed. Again, there are no ladders at this point in the game, ladders that can be used by the raiders, rather. So they had to boost each other up there to get up to the top part. What's going on here, guys, is there are some members who are trying to make their way back to the base. Some BHC members, one was just taken down there by one of Dirt's team. So the fight is now moving out of the base a little bit in terms of being in the desert right outside that BHC base. You'll notice it's a bit of a chaotic scene here, which again is why I'm doing more narrating than typical, because I really want you guys to understand what's going on here. But looks like the horse is back. He's come back for some more action. It'll be a miracle if this horse stays alive during this raid cam. He is a brave horse. He reminds me of fellow YouTuber Shadowfrax, a majestic beast by all accounts. And what we're taking a look again here, guys, is some footage that's going on of some small arms fire outside in the base here. This is Papa Girth. Papa Girth is a beast from anyone who plays in Rustopia, and he is sending some fire, and he looks like he just took a bullet though. Papa Girth is down, but don't worry, he'll be back, and he will exact his revenge. The Girth crew is known for being a small crew. Granted, here they're with Dirt, but typically they roll and they are sort of guns for hire, if you will, and they're pretty well known on the server. Anyways, guys, getting back out here, we're taking a look at some members rolling up from the defenders. This naked guy here is Steve. I don't know who Steve is. He has a bit of an sort of neutral name here. He doesn't have a clan tag. Steve's shown up recently on the server, and Steve is a very, very good shot. Steve was able to take out Girth, which is an achievement in and of itself, and Steve is now rushing into the inner part of that gatehouse, which is where most of Dirt and his members are. The gunfire is still going on in the courtyard between Dirt and BHC members, so that's still a flashpoint at this point in time. And as we pan back out here, we can just see, again, fire incoming from those perimeter flank towers and flank bases. So again, something that the raiders have to be mindful of. Take note, guys, of those stone perimeter walls that were placed down. Those are defensive positions that were put down by the defenders, and they can be used to hide behind and also to allow you to have some cover from the fire, which is really important. Again, that horse is taken off. Smart move. Steve is now rushing up to that gatehouse tower. Steve's the naked guy here, and he's going to be bold and try to go in there. There are many members of Dirt's team in there. Steve's rushing in. He's lighting it up with his AK, and looks like he's taking down one of the raiders. Steve's circling around here. Steve has taken out Pharaoh. Pharaoh, again, is known for being a very, very good shot. Steve's taken out a couple members here. Steve's also taken out... I'm not sure if Murdoch was with Steve or not with Steve, but Murdoch got taken down. And it looks like Steve was actually taken out by a rocket. So it took a rocket to take Steve down there. It looked like Marshall actually had fired a rocket in there. Again, panning back out here, we have a scene here where the defenders are making an assault back on that compound. They know that this is the point where Dirt and his members have staged. And you'll notice BHC members are coming back in to sort of salvage what's left of their base. So they have respawn points probably back at their allies' bases, and they're coming in trying to bring the fight here. Also, guys, just want to give a shout out that the Ewoks are part of Dirt's crew. The Ewok is a clan. Ewok clan is a smaller clan at this point in time, not as large as they used to be, but they're helping out Dirt as well. So you'll see that Ewok clan tag flying high and proud during this raid camp. The BHC members are coming back more well geared. They came out of part of the wall in the compound, so I'm not sure if they had some loot stashed in there. Steve is back in the fight, took out some more members, but once again was taken down. Steve comes back naked with just an AK. He may be picking that up off bodies. Again, guys, during these large-scale raids, those bodies are full of good loot. If you want to get back in the fight, you usually don't have to re-gear too much, but you can run out, grab an AK, grab some armor, even get rockets, C4, all sorts of high-end stuff off those bodies. This is a bit of a choke point here. This gatehouse tower is providing the raiders with access to that courtyard, but then also, you know, it's providing them with their only way out if they want to get out. So that is a bit of a problem. So that is their only way to get back out. And really at this point in time, looking at this scale of this compound, and the reality of the situation here is that Dirt and his crew are most likely not going to be able to fight their way out of this massive compound. They might be able to get out, but they're really, at this point, trying to hold this base and sort of take over this base as a point of pride, if you will. So that's what they're trying to do here, is take over the BHC base, claim it as their own, and defend it. This BHC base has sort of become like the Alamo, and it's sort of almost as if the raiders are actually the ones getting raided now and the ones defending. If that it makes sense. It's an interesting dynamic, but that's really kind of what's happened here. The BHC base is pretty much inoperable at this point in time, and Dirt and his crew are just staging here and defending it as best they can. Make note of, guys, the amount of bodies that are piling up in the courtyard and also outside the courtyard. It's really a chaotic scene here, and it is rivaling larger raid cams that I've filmed, like World War Rosopia, in terms of the body count. It's massive gunfire. This is pretty much, this entire raid cam is gunfire and rockets and people hitting the floor, and it's a really action-packed raid camp. So gunfire is going back off in that inner compound of the BHC base. The BHC members are starting to come back more well-geared than they were before, and Dirt and his crew at this point are losing a bit of their momentum. They're still holding strong, they're still giving a heck of a fight and doing the best that they can, but it's becoming much more difficult at this point in time. As daylight has approached, the defenders were able to gather more of a game plan, decide what they were going to do, and I think they realized at this point in time that the majority of the raiders were focused in that compound, so they know that that's where they need to go to neutralize the threat. Taking a look back out here, guys, at that massive flank tower that's built there, just kind of make note of that in your base designs. If you're going to be building a large-scale base like this, you want to utilize the space wisely, and this compound achieved that. Those large towers allow those defenders to tell what's going on and also to fire in a 360-degree radius, which is really important. So back down here on the ground, this is a chaotic scene. We're kind of going along the ground here, just seeing exactly what damage has been done. You'll notice a lot of bodies are starting to pile up. Raiders are going out to sort of re-gear, and the defenders are pushing through that area and trying to get back in that gatehouse, which is what we're seeing here. Inside the base, Murdoch and Dirt McGurr are trying to hold it as best they can. Dirt is camping that side angle there, which is something that he wants to do. and they are just going to try to pick off those defenders as they come through that bottleneck. And this choke point's where it's all at right now. This is where the height of the action's going down. This is the flashpoint. And at this point, Dirt and his guys are beginning to sort of wind down a little bit. This is, again, by nature of losing those raid bases early on. They're not able to come back as well geared as they typically would. They are respawning in. They're grabbing stuff off bodies, and they're fighting as best they can. But the raid is starting to wind down. What footage you guys are looking at here is KCMO and the YAR group. They've come back out, and they're actually in the fight now. They've come back out from hitting those raid bases, and they're now back in the compound, and they're bringing the fight to Dirt and his men. So you'll notice YAR is now rolling in with BHC, with the other allies in this compound, and they're bringing all of their members to this location to try to weed out the raiders. It's a very chaotic scene, guys. This was a very interesting raid to film. And as we kind of wind it up here, I just wanted to talk about the nature of this raid and how it was in direct relation to the last raid cam, which was the 250 rocket raid, in which the individuals who are being raided here actually brought a large-scale raid to Dirt McGirt in his base. If you guys want to check out that raid cam, it's kind of a prequel to this one, if you will. It's not necessary. They can be watched and appreciated individually. But if you guys want to go ahead and check it out, it's something that might inform more of the tensions that are running in this raid and more of the sort of intensity of it. It was a bit of pride for Dirt and his group to take over this base and hold it for as long as they did, especially in light of those raid bases being taken out. In most cases, that's game over at that point when raiders have their raid bases taken out. But in this case, they pushed forward. They knew they needed a place to be able to respawn at, so they blew into a base as best they could. They got access to some perimeter cabinets, and they put down bags and things to respawn at. I'm calling this raid cam mutually assured destruction. If you guys are familiar with that term, it's a doctrine of military strategy that essentially is the full use of high-yield weapons of mass destruction that's used by two opposing sides, to ensure the complete annihilation of each side. Now, that necessarily didn't happen here, but I thought it was a good term to use nonetheless, because it is a raid that was precipitated by a previous action, and they used the highest yield weapons they can use in Rust, which is the rockets, and they tried to destroy each other's bases as best they could. So in a sense, it was mutually assured destruction. As we take a look at BHC's sign here, I'm not sure if BHC had sort of a premonition or if they were able to predict the future, but they painted their sign in bloody letters, and that was very relevant. This was a sign of quite a fight, quite a bloodbath. As always, guys, really hope you enjoyed this raid cam. Leave the comments if you will. Fado82, peace.